Welcome to the Bucher and Friends podcast. Here is your host.
Let's send it over to Rick Bucher.
Rick Bucher.
Welcome to a special edition of Bucher and Friends. This is a holiday edition, and as you may have noticed, our scheduling has been a little wonky of late. We normally are a daily podcast, and because of the holidays, we've been a little hit or miss. So this is something that I wanted to do simply because this is a normal time. Around this time, I would have a special guest. It's not too often that you hear me going solo, but as a result of some things that happened on Christmas Day and things that are going on in the league, and yes, something that is still going on as a result of a story that I wrote about the yin and yang of playing with LeBron, I decided I wanted to have an opportunity to have a conversation. Just me and you. So I appreciate you indulging me. We're going to get into three subjects in this story. Actually, two. One is LeBron and the story that I did and sort of the fallout. And maybe it's LeBron and, I don't know, journalism, sports coverage. The second is Derrick Rose and the time for him to not only return to Chicago with the Minnesota Timberwolves, but to complete that circle and to return as a member of the Chicago Bulls. Why that makes all the sense in the world for both parties. And then third is LeBron again, but the dalliance with Anthony Davis and what a mistake this is by him. And it's a mistake that's already been perpetrated by his team, the Los Angeles Lakers, in the last year. And I would not be surprised if the same penalty incurs. And I'm not talking about the $500,000 that they were fined because of their tampering with Paul George. But we'll get to that. So here it is. I'm going to be as real with all of you as I possibly can and trust that it's not the cold medicine talking. If you've heard my voice on the podcast the last couple of days and you're hearing it now, a little under the weather, but that's not what this is about. It's about the whole coverage of my piece, which was, for those of you who may not be aware of it, the yin and yang of playing with LeBron. And it's what has me struggling with what sports journalism has become. That piece took several weeks to put together, and it finally dropped on December 5th. And as of December 25th, it was still being discussed in various forms. And so that's a really long run. And obviously anything with LeBron is going to have a certain shelf life, but this thing has taken a bit of a life of its own. And I imagine it's not going to go away because the subject really was the yin and yang of playing with LeBron and the essence of, is he going to be able to attract other players to play with him in LA, and what kind of players those might be, and the challenges or the decisions, the thoughts that go into any other superstar joining him, and the pluses and the minuses there. Now, so it's still being dissected or maybe carved up with individual pieces taken and scrutinized is a better way to describe it. Now, in one respect, I adhere to the philosophy that any publicity is good publicity, and it is gratifying to have people pay attention to my work. On the other hand, it's disturbing to see the work hijacked and made into something else, and I feel as if that's what's happened, to the detriment of the story, the subject, and the players that allowed me to quote them in it, especially Kevin Durant. We'll get to that. I say all this knowing I'm jousting at windmills, or I guess in more modern vernacular. I don't know if this works or not, but the significant other of a celebrity complaining that they cheated. Meaning if you really don't like the way the game is being played, you always have the option to stop playing. My only point here is that we, the media, are doing this to ourselves. That's the toughest part of this. It's not LeBron's fault. It's not Kevin Durant's fault. It's this story being taken and being translated by my fellow media members. The premise of my story was not a result of the quotes I got, by the way. The quotes merely confirmed what people in NBA circles have discussed privately, maybe for years. One writer texted me after the story broke. Didn't break. It wasn't breaking news. Some people it was, but people inside the league, it wasn't breaking news. I wasn't really writing about something that people weren't already aware of. It was a storyline within the NBA. Simply, no one had really addressed it. But this writer texted me and said that, he wished he had pursued it because he was out there. Another asked me if I got any blowback, that's his word, for writing about a taboo, again, his word, subject. Now, why would writing about the yin and yang of playing with LeBron be taboo? Well, because if you're at a major outlet covering the league, access to LeBron James is the most important card you can have in your deck. Careers have been built on having an in with his group. And look, I'm not throwing stones here. My access to Kobe Bryant in his prime did a lot for my career too. I know that ESPN valued me more highly because of that relationship, no doubt about it. Just as Michael Wilbon and Ahmad Rashad's access to Michael Jordan back in the day boosted theirs. Craig Sager and Shaquille O'Neal, I could go down the line. It's part of the game, covering the game. And when you're on a national platform, having access, being able to get responses from the biggest names is of high value to your employers. It's part of the game, covering the game. What has changed are the terms of engagement. You'll never hear me say LeBron is the greatest of all time at anything except one thing. He is the greatest attention magnet the league has ever seen. And for the media, there is nothing more powerful or valuable. That's why writing anything that might be construed, just might be construed as critical by LeBron or his crew would be considered taboo and worthy of potential blowback. Now, if I don't heed that philosophy, it's not because I'm better or more disciplined as a writer or reporter or that I wouldn't want a relationship with LeBron and or his crew. Now, LeBron and I know each other, but we don't know each other. We've been friendly through the years, but nothing beyond that. I don't have any special relationship with him. There's plenty of people who have far, far better relationships with him. And there are a couple of factors at work for that. One is the first time I met Maverick Carter. This is back before LeBron had even been to the finals for the first time with Cleveland. Maverick smiled and said, "Oh, you're a Kobe guy." And I shrugged and I said something. I smiled too. And I said something like, "Well, actually, I like to think of myself as an NBA guy." But Maverick shook his head and his smile got a little tighter. And he said, "Oh no, you're a Kobe guy." And aside from the smugness, that got me a little hot. As my friends and a few business associates will tell you, nothing pushes my buttons faster than someone presuming to know who I am and what I'm about, especially if it puts me in a box. And I could go into some psychoanalysis as to why that is, but the fact is, it does. So let's leave it at that. What it also told me is that I was viewed as if not an enemy, an outsider by the LeBron camp. Because at that time, if you'll remember, that LeBron-Kobe battle was hot. I just went through the same thing with Shaq and Kobe. Shaq decided, and everybody around Shaq, you were either with him or you were with Kobe, and you couldn't be both. And as much as I wanted to be both, like if you're going to make me choose, well, okay. I already had the relationship with Kobe. I'm not going to abandon that. I'm going to be fair. I'm going to try to be as fair as I can, not having the same sort of access, but nonetheless, if you make me choose, you're the one who's making me choose. Now, I've brokered peace with people who have taken me to be an adversary, Shaq being one of them. But I sensed that this with Maverick, and I don't even think necessarily with LeBron. It's a little bit like people around a certain guy will demand a certain fealty for access. And I just wasn't willing to give it. Not being ever based in Miami or Cleveland or close enough to kind of cultivate my own way, into getting to know LeBron and avoiding the layers. It wasn't something that I saw that was going to happen or was going to be worth, quite honestly, my time. And I'll get to why I believe that as well. Because you can blame that on my introduction to the NBA. When I first started covering the league, I was a beat writer covering the Golden State Warriors. And I was the youngest, newest guy on the beat. And Don Nelson was king of the franchise, head coach and GM. Very much the same way that LeBron is king of the NBA. Nelly was king of the realm of the Warriors. When I first took the beat, I went and introduced myself to Nelly and basically just tried to establish a working relationship. This was a start over for me in my career in some ways. I was hitting the reset button, and it was what I'd always dreamed of doing. But I came in and I essentially said I would be fair to him if he'd be fair to me. And it took me probably more words and time than necessary, but when I was done, Nelly said quite directly that if he had to lie to me, he would. And it was such stark honesty, it almost made me laugh. It makes me laugh today, just thinking about it. In a way, I appreciated it. And if nothing else, it also liberated me because it meant in my mind that I didn't have to take him at his word. And anybody else who was had a built-in relationship with Nelly, if he said it, then you just wrote it and it was a fact. And he was telling me I didn't have to take it as a fact, or at least that's how I took it. I was free to second guess whatever he claimed or go to somebody else and ask them if they thought that was true. It also led me to build relationships with everybody else in the kingdom. And what I found is that there were plenty of people who wanted the truth told about the Warriors and Nelly, and not the truth as Nelly necessarily wanted, just the truth, even if it upset Nelly. And look, I'm not trying to blow my own horn here, and I certainly hope, my producer hopes as well, I'm not being preachy here. That's not my intention. But just the way things were, the whole crew that had been covering Nelly for so long, they were built into the mindset of not ticking him off or anybody around him off, because then access would be cut off. And while access is certainly more paramount today than it is then, it was still important. Access was key, and Nelly held it. So you didn't want to tick him off. Well, I just happened to kind of walk into this situation where I wasn't going to get any special access, if any, and I was the new guy on the block, so I had nothing left to lose, and I happened to walk into it, and so it gave me an opportunity. Kind of blindly fell into this opportunity of people who wanted the truth out. And, in very short order, it was the truth, even if it upset Nelly, which in a very short time my stories did. It's not what I set out to do by any means. It's just kind of that's how it worked. Now, I don't know if my latest story about LeBron upset him. I don't think it contained anything he wasn't already aware of. And it didn't blame him for anything. I mean, honestly, I didn't see it as something that was a referendum on him. It's more about his star power. And as I see it, really just the trappings of his own success. The reality is, look, I also know that when someone is used to controlling the narrative, they don't willingly give that up. We've got plenty of high-profile examples of that in today's world, in and outside of sports. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist by nature, but this is the one aspect of the consumption and regurgitation of my story that bothers me. It was a narrative about LeBron built by the players, scouts, and executives that I talked to, with a lot of layers and complexities to the story, which is why it ran 2,000 some words. And it was then transformed into two concepts put up on tees for LeBron to smash. That the environment around him is toxic, a word that Kevin Durant used, but used in a particular context about fanboys in the media, and that players don't want to play with him, both of which are just misleading oversimplifications. There's plenty of players who would love to play with him. The question is, does another superstar want to bow to King James? Because that's generally what has happened to every star who has joined forces with him. Now, there's great byproducts. You play for championships. Chris Bosh and Kevin Love both have rings to show for it. I think they also had a couple all-star turns. There are pluses, but for guys who see themselves, especially at this stage of LeBron's career and their stage, as being on the same level, it means that somebody has to be second. And in every instance with LeBron, LeBron is not going to be second. And that's the thing that they have to weigh. And that was a big part of the story. So what I'd like to know from LeBron is, how does he feel about the idea that his immense stardom could actually be a deterrent to other superstars who aspire to the same heights? And is there a way around that? Could he offer them something? Or does he recognize that's just kind of the way it works? I don't know how he'd answer that. I'd like to know. I'd also like to know if he thinks that he does have fanboys in the media, and why or why not. Now, I'd be happy to do a sit down and ask those questions. And Maverick, you know how to reach me. And maybe I'm just working on an old operating system. Maybe maintaining a relationship with the face of the league is the most important thing. Certainly, there are people that are having a tremendous amount of success, or at least degrees of success, certain definitions of success, in following that model. I just can't do it. I can't do it. And maybe that's a character flaw of mine. Maybe that's an Achilles heel. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this, other than to say that this story is still going on, but it's become something other than what the story originally was or what I wrote. And I guess I share this with you because it's really weird being inside the machine and seeing these things happen. And sometimes you feel like you have a certain amount of control over what happens, and then you see your work go out there and it becomes something else. And people interpreting it in different ways and then attributing it to you. All I ask you is this, and for the same reason that I applauded LeBron when he was asked about the toxic environment. He said, I don't know enough about it. I haven't read the story. Read the story. And whatever you want to attribute to me after reading the entire story, whatever you want to attribute to Kevin Durant after you read the entire story, I'm good with that. I'm absolutely good with that. But don't take whatever else has been cherry-picked from the story and put out there, not even with my name on it, but most people know where the genesis of this was, and attribute any of that to me, because I really haven't had a hand in it. So that's my one holiday wish from my listeners of Bucher and Friends. All right. So the other subject that I wanted to get to as a result of, in part, Derrick Rose returning to Chicago. Yes, return to Chicago. He did it in a Minnesota Timberwolves uniform. And he got the opportunity to hear, by the way, so I do this thing for sportsbetcollective.com as well. Throughout the week, pick games against the spread, over, under, etc. I really like it. It's kind of fun, being able to use my inside knowledge of the league, and inform people now that gambling is being embraced by professional sports, already has been embraced by the NBA. I don't feel like I'm doing anything untoward. I can tell you that anybody who's been in the business for a while, it takes a little getting used to, because it used to be you didn't touch gambling. And I don't wager, but I love putting my pride and my knowledge on the line to see the picks that I can get right. And ideally, your money, if I'm advising you how to do it, feels like it's my money. So I don't want you losing. I want you winning, because I want us winning. Anyway, so I stayed completely away from this game, the Bulls and the Timberwolves. One, because I thought it was going to be a referendum on the two coaches. talking about fealty, who did the players, whose honor did they want to defend the most? Would it be the Timberwolves coming back to Chicago playing for Tom Thibodeau, former Bulls coach? Or would it be the Bulls players, some of whom were traded to the Bulls by Tom Thibodeau and the Timberwolves to show, hey, we want to stick up for our new guy, Jim Boylan? And I don't know that this is a referendum on that, but potentially that kind of emotional tumult and uncertainty of which scale was going to be more weighted, I wanted to stay away from it. And another reason was Derrick Rose coming back to Chicago. And I just knew that he was going to have a game. And that the emotion of the building, everything was going to be tilting in his direction. And indeed, he finished with a team-high 24 points. Timberwolves rolled over the Bulls, 119-94. There were chants of MVP while he was at the free throw line at one point. So I stayed away from it as far as picking that game. But there was conversations that I've already heard around the league, including some in Chicago, about the idea, the notion of Derrick Rose not coming back in a Timberwolves uniform, but coming back to play for the Bulls. And to me, it makes all the sense in the world. Derrick has already demonstrated that he can play. I mean, he said it earlier, and he wants to be sixth man. Now, if you think that Jeff Teague is better than Derrick Rose, if you think that Derrick Rose is not a starter on that Minnesota Timberwolves team, well, I respectfully disagree. But nonetheless, he is embraced, whether it be in Cleveland, it be in New York, it be in Minnesota. The man has been through it. And so, this idea of, you can't go home again. Well, I think you can. And I actually was thinking of all these movies where that's generally the theme. I mean, Wizard of Oz, Finding Nemo, Lord of the Rings, and a movie that for whatever reason, I don't get a chance to see. I'm lucky enough to see movies first run or see them like within a year of when they come out. For whatever reason, The Martian with Matt Damon, I've seen at least 3 times in full and probably another 3 times in parts on various planes. And he does a little soliloquy at the end. He's talking to a class, and he talks about that you get to a point where you think it's over. And he can say it better than I could quote it, but you should hear it from Matt Damon. Here it is.
At some point, everything's going to go south on you. Everything's going to go south, and you're going to say, this is it. This is how I end. Now, you can either accept that, or you can get to work.
So I thought about Derrick Rose when I think about that, because he could have quit. He's got enough money in the bank, youngest MVP ever. He'd accomplished enough. His body had betrayed him enough times. Nobody would have faulted him for walking off. And yet he didn't. He kept going and he figured it out. And as a result, I feel like it's time for him to come home. I hope that doesn't sound too schmaltzy, but I look at their team. I look at where Derrick is. I look at the emotional disappointment for him when he knew he had to leave Chicago. And he didn't do it regretfully. It was a deal and an understanding. It was best for the franchise. It was best for him. But he was lost out there for a while. New York, trying to fit in around Carmelo, playing a style that was not going to work for him. I mean, Phil's style just was the worst for him. And taking all the criticism, and he's not this and he's not that, and all of it. And then going to Cleveland and being bounced from Cleveland, and then just being in nowhere land, being traded to Utah as basically just filler and being let go by Utah. And then finally finding refuge with Tom Thibodeau and just having a chance to play again. And then you have the 50-point game and all of that. And it's one of the most heartwarming stories to see him come around full circle. But would be complete, and not just for the story, but for him, for the franchise. As much as it made sense to trade him away It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to get him back. Certainly Chris Dunn, I think, and that entire team would benefit from Derrick's leadership. He's older and wiser now. He's married, kids. He's settled. Like he's in a different place. And I know what his leadership meant to the Bulls the first time around. And I can't help believe it would be that and more, even as a supporting member, if that's ultimately what it ends up being. I have a feeling that it could grow to something a little bit bigger than that. But that would be getting ahead of ourselves. All right. So that's enough for my pitch that the Chicago Bulls, as of next year, if Derrick Rose is not on that roster, it will be an opportunity missed by all involved. Another opportunity that may be missed, and I cannot believe that this happened and is happening. And that's with LeBron making the overt recruiting pitch with Anthony Davis. And I know he's tried to cover his tracks since then, but this was a huge mistake. It was a huge mistake. And his answer that he was simply responding to a question doesn't fly. Yes, he was asked, what do you think about playing with Anthony Davis? And look, he knows he could have simply said, I'm not supposed to talk about players under contract to other teams. I mean, GMs and coaches do it all the time. They're asked that, and that's their response. He could have done the same thing. Because, again, some players may approach it different. LeBron James is in a different category. Everybody knows that. He knows that. To pretend otherwise, or to suggest he should be treated, look, he's not treated the same as other players in so many other ways, to then say, well, but other players have talked about other players under contract and they didn't get into trouble. It's not the same. Can we all agree on that? And then looking into the camera and saying, and I play by the rules. I mean, that's chutzpah at its finest. But what makes it really dumb is that it mirrors what Magic Johnson did last summer that got the Lakers fined, and why so many teams are dead set against making a deal with the Lakers for stars that even have expressed an interest in going to LA. There was no way that the Pacers were going to trade Paul George to the Lakers. There was no way that San Antonio was going to trade Kawhi Leonard to the Lakers. Now, I don't know if the Lakers, I've still tried to do a little research on this. I have not gotten a clear indication that the Lakers were offering everything and anything for Kawhi. I don't think it got to that point. My understanding is the Lakers never went to that point because their feeling was, we'll get him or we'll get somebody next summer. And we already got LeBron, and we'll get the next one. We're confident of that. But what I am convinced of is that the Spurs would have taken any deal possible other than the Lakers first, if it made sense. And indeed, getting a proven all-star and sending Kawhi to the Eastern Conference fulfilled everything that they could hope, being forced to move him. Now, I'm told that this is that all over again, that the New Orleans Pelicans will look for any deal elsewhere before they're going to send Anthony Davis to the Lakers. One of those teams I know for a fact has interest. I can tell you this. Danny Ainge expresses interest in a lot of guys. Some of it is genuine. Some of it is, we want to keep our name out there. We want to let everybody know that we're trying to upgrade. And some of it's just good advertising. But this is, from everything I know, this is legit. They'd love to find a way to deal for Anthony Davis. And they certainly have the requisite pieces to make that happen. If Pelicans want to rebuild, or they want to have the opportunity to take another shot and find another Anthony Davis in the draft, the Boston Celtics can certainly provide them ample opportunity, along with a proven piece or two. They can make this happen. Why, if you're the Lakers, and maybe it doesn't make a difference, but if you're LeBron and the Lakers, why rattle that cage again? Why assure yourself that the Pelicans are going to be of the mind? Screw it. You're not, because here's the thing. You're not just expressing your interest in Anthony Davis. you're screwing with the Pelicans season. This creates a problem and a distraction and question marks. You don't think there's question marks? You don't think that the other Pelicans at some point want to know where Anthony Davis stands? What? You didn't hear about the team meeting where the Spurs wanted to know where Kawhi Leonard stood? You didn't hear about Draymond Green confronting Kevin Durant and mentioning his free agency? You don't think that's in the minds of teammates when you have a high-profile teammate who has the same agent and has LeBron talking about how he'd like to play with him? You don't think as you go to war every day and you're battling for a playoff spot and you may be playing that team, you don't think you have those questions? After seeing LeBron and any number of other guys kind of do the same thing where they were out the door and they were making plans to be out the door even in the course of playing for a playoff spot? Absolutely. And LeBron is creating those questions. Anthony Davis didn't necessarily create them, but he also hasn't stamped them out. They've created that thing. But there has been a problem created for Dell Demps as a result of this innuendo being presented. And this is something that GMs and teams around the league already resent the Lakers for. The $500,000 that they got fined for tampering with Paul George by the league is looked at as, a game or two worth of parking receipts. $500,000 isn't a whole lot to a franchise like the Lakers. And franchises like the Indiana Pacers know that. The New Orleans Pelicans, another small market, and even more so than the Indiana Pacers, questionably cash poor. I mean, have the benefit of being owned by the owners of the New Orleans Saints, but still, they don't have a great corporate base. They don't have a great season ticket base. They don't have the same resources that the Lakers have. So on top of that, to have, their star players being recruited right in front of their noses doesn't make them feel good. Makes them resentful. And why do that? Like, what's the benefit? And I know LeBron went on and said, ask me about this player, ask me about that player. Come on. I don't even know why the media would be led by the nose and follow that exercise. It's camouflaging what he originally did. We know what he did. There's no disguising that. It was pointed. He shares an agent with that guy, as he does with a number of other guys who happen to be on the Lakers, as he did with a number of guys who got paid to stay with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Come on. They're insulting all of our intelligence. Are they not? Now, I said, when it came to my original story, there was nothing there that I saw as critical of LeBron. This last move, this I see as I would expect him to be smarter than this. I would expect the Lakers to be smarter than this. It's an arrogant move for both of them. And if it plays out like the others, then it's going to be a painful, punishing one with repercussions. It's going to be that kind of a move. All right. That's it for this podcast. In my next, I will be joined by Ryan Hollins. We are on the holiday schedule, so but we are going to stick to giving you all of our picks against the spread and the over-under for all of the games Friday night. And we broke even last week, our worst week so far. But overall, we're still well above 500, and we're going to get back on that and only amplify that this week. But in the meantime, I hope your holidays are good. Don't forget to follow me at Rick Bucher, and you can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at BucherFriends. And if you enjoy the show, listen, this can be your Christmas gift to me. Drop us a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. You don't have to write anything. You just need to click stars, click as many or as few as you like. And in addition, screenshot your review and tweet it to us. You don't have to do this, but if you do, tweet it to us at BucherFriends. You'll be entered for a chance to win some free stuff from Ryan, Will, or me. Who doesn't like free stuff? Of course you do. So, thanks for listening. and Ryan and I will be talking to you next.